For the purpose of this talk, I am defining the Greater Shankill as the area between the red lines in this map. Basically from Ardoyne down to Carlisle Circus, along Denmark Street and Townsend Street to Divis Street, and then along Divis Street and cutting back up to Woodvale. Within this area there were 9 Presbyterian congregations in 1914. Today there are only 2 congregations, Westkirk and Emmanuel. The Presbyterian Church in Ireland was the only denomination in the world which produced a record of service and sacrifice in the Great War. Early in the war, the Church asked all of its congregations to maintain the names and details of members who had enlisted for war service. Some congregations did not maintain records. Most congregations only recorded the names of men, and a few congregations included women. In 1919, the Presbyterian Historical Society of Ireland compiled the returns made by the congregations, and the Presbyterian Church in Ireland Roll of Honour was published in book format in September 1921. The degree of information provided by each congregation varied, but all included regiment or service and details as to whether the people listed had died, been wounded, taken prisoner or received gallantry awards. The entries for congregations in the cities and larger towns also tended to include exact addresses. Although the PCI Roll of Honour contains over 24,000 names from across the island of Ireland, the compilers estimated that a truer figure would be over 26,000. Inevitably, the numbers recorded on congregation memorials differ from the corresponding entry in the Roll of Honour, especially with congregation memorials erected in 1919 and 1920. The War Memorial organ in Townsend Street Presbyterian Church was dedicated on Sunday 13th November 1921, along with 2 memorial tablets. One tablet is headed In Memoriam and records the names of 44 members of the congregation who died. The other tablet is headed Roll of Honour and records the names of 180 members of the congregation who served in the Great War and returned home. A memorial window commemorating Robert Thomas Martin and his son, Lieutenant John Sinclair Martin, was dedicated in Townsend Street Presbyterian Church in March 1922. John Sinclair Martin was born on 18th May 1896 at College Gardens to Robert Thomas Martin, a solicitor, and Edith Sinclair. He was educated at Bilton Grange Preparatory School and Uppingham School in England, where he was a member of the Officers' Training Corps. He enlisted with 5th Battalion Royal Irish Rifles at the outbreak of the war and was commissioned as a 2nd Lieutenant on 15th August 1914 and promoted to full Lieutenant on 10th January 1915. He was stationed at Victoria Barracks before being posted to 1st Battalion on the Western Front in March 1915. After the death of Captain William Mortimer Lanyon on 5th April, Lieutenant Martin took command of their company. He was killed in action whilst leading his men against the first line of German trenches at Aubers Ridge on 9th May 1915. He was 18 years old and has no known grave, being commemorated on the Pleurgstert Memorial in Belgium. He is also commemorated on a tablet in Tullyallen Presbyterian Church, where his grandfather had been the minister, and on a family memorial in the graveyard. He is also commemorated on the tablets for the Ulster Reform Club and Malone Golf Club. I have not been able to locate newspaper references to a war memorial being installed in Eglinton Street Presbyterian Church. In 1938, the congregation relocated to Carrs Glen on the Ballysullen Road and is now called Eglinton Presbyterian Church. William James McClements was born on 5th May 1886 at Bradford Street, which was off the Old Lodge Road, to William McClements, an army pensioner, and Mary Thompson. William married Ellen Hayes on 4th December 1910 at St Anne's Parish Church, and they were living with his widowed mother at Christopher Street in 1911. William was a van man, as was a brother, and 2 other brothers worked in a biscuit factory. William was working as a chauffeur when he enlisted with the Royal Irish Rifles, and a son called Alan was born on 29th May 1915, a few weeks after the Ulster Division Review in Belfast. When Alan was about a month old, William left Ireland for final training in England before being deployed to France with 15th Battalion in October 1915. William was reported as missing during the German Spring Offensive of March 1918, also known as the Battle of St Quentin. The War Office Daily List, dated 19th November 1918, reclassified William from missing to killed. William was 31 years old when he died and is commemorated on the Pozières Memorial in France. He left a widow and 2 children under the age of 5. Nellie McClements received a dependence pension of 25 shillings and 5 pence per week from 9th December 1918 and was awarded a war gratuity of £16 and 10 shillings in late 1919. The weekly pension equates to about £60 per week in current terms, and the war gratuity equates to about £215. As with the Eglinton Street Church, I have not been able to identify whether there was a memorial or roll of honour for the Bethany congregation. This church sat on the site of what is now Emmanuel Presbyterian Church, which is an amalgamation of the 2 Presbyterian churches that were located on Agnes Street. Abraham Smith was born on 11th May 1896 at Linwood Street to Thomas Smith, a stonecutter, and Mary Main. The family lived at Silvio Street in 1901, at Hooker Street in 1911, and at Rusholme Street during the war. In 1911, Abraham was a machine boy at Brookfield Spinning Mill on the Crumlin Road. He enlisted with the Royal Irish Rifles and was deployed to France with 15th Battalion in October 1915. On 6th June 1916, 15th Battalion relieved 10th Battalion in the trenches at Hamel. The line came under very heavy fire by German artillery and 2 men were killed by trench mortar fire. Rifleman Smith was 20 years old when he died in the artillery bombardment, along with Rifleman Robert Connor Gowdy, and they are buried in Hamel Military Cemetery at Beaumont Hamel in France. Mary Smith received a dependence pension of 5 shillings per week from 13th March 1917 and was awarded a war gratuity of £7 and 10 shillings in January 1920. 2 of his brothers also served in the Great War but are not named on the Roll of Honour entry for the congregation. Thomas served with the Royal Irish Rifles and Samuel served with the Army Service Corps. The memorial tablet and the Roll of Honour for Agnes Street Presbyterian Church were unveiled and dedicated on Sunday, 7th December 1919. Newspaper coverage of the ceremony recorded that the Roll of Honour had 545 names, with 72 fatalities recorded on the tablet. The memorial tablet is unique in that name, address and date of death are recorded. The names are recorded in the chronological order of death. The first man named on the tablet is Francis Adair of Wimbledon Street, who is recorded as dying on 22nd August 1914. However, the military documentation records that he was killed in action with 2nd Battalion Royal Irish Rifles on 22nd August 1916. The memorial tablet and Roll of Honour are on display at the Somme Museum in Conlig, and a replica of the tablet and the names on the Roll of Honour are on public display at the junction of Agnes Street and the Shankill Road. William Ireland was born on 9th October 1897 at Albany Street to James Ireland and Agnes Johnston. The family lived at Crimea Street in 1901, at Hemsworth Street in 1911 and at Eaton Street during the Great War. He was working at Mackey's on the Springfield Road when he enlisted with the Seaforth Highlanders in August 1915. William was deployed to France on 10th November 1915 with 4th Battalion, which was also known as the Ross Highlanders. In January 1917, the London Gazette reported that Private Ireland, who was attached to a trench mortar battery, had been awarded the Military Medal for bravery in the field. The Northern Whig reported that the award had been made for carrying in wounded comrades under heavy fire in November 1916. Private Ireland died of wounds at 50th Casualty Clearing Station on 1st August 1918, aged 19, and is buried in Cézanne Communal Cemetery in France. His brother John Ireland enlisted with the Army Service Corps, but was serving with the Devonshire Regiment when he accidentally drowned at Thorpe Ness in England on 6 September 1918. He was 18 years old and is buried in the graveyard at St Elizabeth's Church of Ireland in Dundonald. Agnes Ireland was awarded a combined dependence pension of 19 shillings per week from 17th April 1918 and a war gratuity of £14 in respect of William in December 1919. The memorial for the Shankill Road Mission was unveiled and dedicated on 30th January 1921 by the Reverend Dr. John Morrow Sims, who had served as the principal chaplain for the Ulster Division during the Great War. The central brass panel records the names of 50 members of the congregation who lost their lives. The flanking oak panels record the names of 188 members of the congregation who served and returned home. The fatalities panel was relocated to Townsend Street Presbyterian Church. William Neely was born on 24th October 1893 at Albany Street, which ran from Agnes Street to Beresford Street, to James Neely, an engine driver, and Sarah Steele. He enlisted with the Royal Engineers around 1910 and was stationed at Rochester in England in 1911. At the outbreak of the war, he was a reservist and working in the engineering department at Harland and Wolff. William was recalled to active service and deployed to France on 27th August 1914 with 1st Squadron. In the early part of 1917, he requested a transfer to the Ulster Division and subsequently served with 150th Field Company. He was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal, with the citation being published in the London Gazette in August 1918. For conspicuous gallantry and devotion to duty, he had charge of the demolition of a railway bridge and waited under continuous artillery and machine gun fire until the enemy were actually on the bridge before destroying it. Later, when ordered to demolish another bridge, he sent back his party and waited alone until the enemy were on the opposite bank before firing the charge. He displayed courage and initiative of a high order. William was a transport sergeant when he was transferred to the Class B Army Reserve on 17 February 1919. Two memorial tablets were unveiled and dedicated in Argyle Place Presbyterian Church on Wednesday, 10th November 1920 by the Reverend John Morrow Sims, former moderator of the Presbyterian Church in Ireland. The tablets are probably the most ornate of all the memorials in the Shankill area. Each tablet is made from white Sicilian marble with a centre panel of Kilkenny black marble on which the names are inscribed. At the top of the green marble pillars are the years 1914 and 1918, and there are crossed swords intersecting with the victor's laurel wreath. The fatalities panel contains 25 names ordered by rank and then alphabetically by surname. The roll of honour panel contains the names of 115 people who served and returned home. William and John McIlveen received several gallantry awards. William was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal with Bar, and John was awarded the Military Medal with Bar, the Médaille Militaire by the President of France, and an Ulster Division Gallantry Certificate. They were born at Wilton Square South to John McIlveen, a tenter at the Lawnbrook Weaving Factory, and Mary Ann Corrie. The family home was later at Westland Street when they were the stepsons of Sarah McIlveen. William McIlveen was born on 7th May 1892 and was a clerk at Harland and Wolff when he enlisted with the Royal Irish Rifles. He was deployed to France with 14th Battalion in October 1915. Rifleman McIlveen was reported as wounded in the War Office casualty list dated 10th August 1916, which means he was probably wounded in the Somme offensive. He was an acting company sergeant major and serving with 15th Battalion when he was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for his actions during the Battle of Messines in June 1917. The citation was published in the London Gazette 2 months later. For conspicuous gallantry and devotion to duty, although wounded early in an attack, he led his platoon with the greatest pluck and skill after his officer had been killed, keeping them in the right direction and most ably reorganising them and consolidating the captured position. Throughout the engagement, he displayed splendid leadership and control. William was awarded the Bar to the DCM for his actions in the German Spring Offensive in March 1918, the citation being published in August 1918. For conspicuous gallantry and devotion to duty, during a determined enemy attack preceded by heavy bombardment, this NCO walked up and down the positions in the open, encouraging the men. A portion of our line having been forced back, he collected a party of 9 men and, opening rapid fire, checked the advance of the enemy and, leading our men back to their original positions, restored the line. The next day, when the enemy, having penetrated our positions on the right flank, attacked us from the rear, he again collected a small party and fought a gallant rearguard action. Though almost surrounded, he led his men in a charge against the enemy and succeeded in extricating them from a difficult situation. Company Sergeant Major McIlveen was killed by shell fire on 6th May 1918, the day before he turned 26. Rifleman John Alexander Moore, aged 19, was also killed in the bombardment. They are buried in adjacent graves in the Canada Farm Cemetery in France. 2 other men of the battalion were wounded in the same incident. Sarah McIlveen received a dependence pension of 9 shillings per week from 10th December 1918. That would equate to approximately £24 per week in current terms. The following December, John McIlveen Sr. received a war gratuity of £24, just over 1,000 in current terms. John McIlveen was born on 21st December 1893 and was working as an upholsterer for Anderson Macaulay when he enlisted with the Royal Irish Rifles. He was posted to 14th Battalion in France in November 1915. Corporal McIlveen was reported as wounded in the War Office casualty list dated 17th June 1916. In July 1917, the London Gazette reported that Sergeant McIlveen had been awarded the Médaille Militaire by the President of France. In September 1917, the Belfast newsletter reported that Sergeant McIlveen had been awarded the Military Medal by the King. In November 1917, the Belfast newsletter published an account of Sergeant McIlveen's action that led to the award of a bar to the military medal. During an enemy bombardment of our line, a direct hit was obtained on one of our trench mortar positions, setting fire to the camouflage which fell, burning into a stock of shells, fuses and cartridges. Sergeant McIlveen and Private Banks, regardless of personal risk, rushed into the emplacement and succeeded in extinguishing the fire. By this brave act of heroism and cool, stern determination, the lives of the whole platoon were saved. Sergeant McIlveen was transferred to the Class Z Army Reserve on 24th February 1919. The memorial tablet for Nelson Memorial Presbyterian Church was unveiled and dedicated on Sunday 25th October 1919. The tablet records the names of 276 members of the congregation who served in the Great War, with 48 losing their lives and 228 returning home. Thomas Harland was born around 1869 and was a winding master when he married Elizabeth Martin on 28th July 1893 at White Abbey Congregational Church. They lived at Newington Avenue in Larne in 1901, at Cumberland Street in 1911 and at Main Street in White Abbey in 1918. Thomas was manager of the Smithfield Weaving Factory and a member of the West Belfast Regiment UVF when he enlisted with the Royal Army Medical Corps. He was posted to France with the 109th Field Ambulance in October 1915 and held the rank of Sergeant Major when he was awarded the Military Cross in 1917. For conspicuous gallantry and devotion to duty, an ammunition train having caught fire, he and 4 other men uncoupled and pushed out of danger the 8 trucks of ammunition. This gallant work was performed amidst a hail of shells and fragments, owing to the ammunition in the 9th truck exploding. At any moment, the contents of the remaining trucks might have done likewise. He displayed splendid fearlessness and promptitude in dealing with a very dangerous and critical situation. Warrant Officer Harland survived the war and is also commemorated on the memorial tablet in White Abbey Congregational Church. Thomas was a founding member of Boyne Defenders LOL 1297 and he died on 1st November 1962, aged 97. As with the Eglinton Street and Bethany congregations, I've been unable to find a reference to a war memorial in the Crumlin Road Presbyterian Church. If a memorial had existed, it was lost when the church was destroyed in the German air raids in 1941. Arthur Hill was born on 15th February 1877 near Strabane to Arthur Hill and Anne Jane West, and he married Alice Pratt on 26th December 1904 at the Primitive Methodist Church in Melbourne Street. He was a mechanic or fitter and they were living at Enfield Street in 1911. Arthur was a member of the West Belfast Regiment UVF when he enlisted with the Royal Irish Rifles and was deployed to France with 9th Battalion in October 1915. He was reported as missing and then as killed in action during the Somme offensive, his wife being advised of his death. However, he had been found in Thiepval Woods on 6th July 1916 with gunshot wounds to the side and was taken into captivity. Due to his medical condition, he was transferred to Switzerland as an internee in November 1917. He was repatriated to England on 24th March 1918 and was admitted to the King George V Hospital in London. Later he was transferred to the UVF Hospital at Botanic Avenue. While still in hospital, he was transferred to the Class Z Army Reserve on 27th May 1919. Company Sergeant Major Arthur Hill died of gunshot wound complications at the UVF Hospital on 24th August 1919. He was 42 years old and received a military funeral from his home in Enfield Street to Belfast City Cemetery 2 days later. Arthur Hill is recorded as served and returned home on the memorial tablet for Woodvale Park Presbyterian Church. The memorial for Woodvale Park congregation was unveiled by Mrs. Eliza Gray Milliken on 30th November 1919 and dedicated by her husband, the Reverend John Milliken. When it was unveiled, the tablet contained the names of 144 men from the congregation who had served in the Great War, 21 of whom lost their lives. An additional name, Samuel Latham, was added at a later date. Robert Mann was born on 13th February 1883 at Connor in County Antrim to Samuel Mann, a bricklayer, and Agnes Lamont. The family lived at Mountview Street in 1901, Snugville Street in 1911, and Desmond Street during the Great War. Robert was working as a bricklayer for McLaughlin and Harvey when he enlisted with the Royal Enniskillen Fusiliers. His brother John was working as a dispatch clerk for W&G Baird, owners of the Belfast Telegraph, when he enlisted with the Royal Irish Rifles. John was deployed to France with 15th Battalion in October 1915, and Robert was posted to the 10th Battalion on the Western Front after 1915. On 19th July 1916, the Belfast Newsletter reported that Robert and John Mann had both been wounded during the Somme offensive. Private Robert Mann was serving with 11th Battalion Royal Enniskillen Fusiliers when he was killed in action on 27th April 1917. He was 34 years old and is buried in Pond Farm Cemetery in Belgium. He is also commemorated on a family memorial in Ballyclug Church of Ireland graveyard near Brashane. John Mann was discharged due to wounds on 30th May 1917 with the Silver War Badge, and he died on 2nd April 1956, aged 58. Robert and John Mann are also commemorated on the entry in the PCI Vote of Honour book for Bethany Congregation.